The most transformative night of Diana's life was spent in a hospital corridor. Layla Amara, a mother, was crying desperately as she tried to explain her 19-year-old daughter Zara's condition. When Diana stepped in to translate, they discovered that young Zara had only a simple infection. But this simple misunderstanding showed Diana that there were much bigger problems in the world. The November rain was pelting against the windows of London General Hospital as the evening shift began. It was 1996, and the hospital's emergency department was unusually busy for a Tuesday night. Among the crowd of patients and families waiting for treatment, a woman in a simple navy coat and headscarf sat quietly in the corner, her identity completely hidden. Princess Diana had arrived at the hospital 30 minutes earlier, using the name Sarah Johnson and dressed in the most ordinary clothes she could find in her wardrobe. No security detail, no royal protocol, no advance notice to hospital staff. Tonight, she wanted to understand something that had been troubling her for months: how ordinary people experience the healthcare system when they were most vulnerable. Diana had been inspired to make this secret visit after reading letters from families who had written to her about their struggles navigating medical care. Many of these letters came from families who didn't speak English as their first language, who felt lost and frightened in hospital environments that seemed unwelcoming to their cultural differences. As she sat in the waiting area, Diana observed the controlled chaos around her. Nurses moved efficiently between patients, doctors consulted charts and called out names, but there was something missing that she couldn't quite identify. Then she noticed the family sitting across from her. A woman in her 40s wearing a colorful headscarf and traditional dress sat beside a young woman who was clearly her daughter. The older woman's hands shook as she held a piece of paper with writing on it, and her eyes were red from crying. The younger woman, who appeared to be about 19, was pale and obviously unwell, leaning against her mother's shoulder with her eyes closed. Diana watched as a nurse approached their section of the waiting room. "Zara Amara?" the nurse called out, mispronouncing the name badly. The mother looked up hopefully and raised her hand, saying something in a language Diana didn't recognize but somehow understood was an affirmative response. "Come with me, please," the nurse said. But when the mother began speaking rapidly in her native language, the nurse's expression became impatient. "I'm sorry, but you need to speak English. I can't understand what you're saying." Diana watched as the mother's face crumpled with frustration and fear. She pulled out the piece of paper she'd been clutching and tried to hand it to the nurse, pointing at her daughter and speaking more urgently. The nurse glanced at the paper briefly. "I can't read this. Do you have someone who can translate?" The mother shook her head, tears beginning to flow again. She pointed at her daughter and said one of the few English words she knew: "Sick, very sick." "I understand she's sick," the nurse said, her tone becoming more strained, "but I need to know what's wrong with her. You'll have to wait until we can find a translator." Diana felt her heart breaking as she watched this interaction. Here was a mother whose child was clearly suffering, trying desperately to communicate with medical professionals who were equally frustrated by the language barrier. Both sides wanted the same thing: for the young woman to receive proper care, but they couldn't understand each other. Without thinking, Diana stood up and approached the family. "Excuse me," she said softly to the nurse. "I speak several languages. Perhaps I could help translate." The nurse looked relieved. "That would be wonderful. What language are they speaking?" Diana listened as the mother spoke again and recognized elements of Arabic mixed with what sounded like a regional dialect. During her charitable work, Diana had learned basic phrases in several languages, and she had an intuitive ability to understand the emotional content even when she couldn't catch every word. "She's saying her daughter has been sick for 3 days," Diana translated, sitting down beside the family. "High fever, vomiting, and severe headaches. She's very worried it might be something serious." The nurse made notes as Diana continued to interpret. "She says they've been waiting for 4 hours, and she's afraid her daughter is getting worse." "Why didn't they mention the symptoms earlier?" the nurse asked. Diana turned to the mother and spoke slowly in a mixture of English and the few Arabic phrases she knew. The mother responded immediately, relief evident in her voice at finally being understood. "She says they tried to explain, but no one understood them. She has a letter from their family doctor, but it's written in Arabic." The nurse took the letter Diana offered her. "We'll need to have this officially translated, but your interpretation helps a lot. Let me get the doctor to see them right away." As the nurse hurried away, Diana remained with the family. The mother, whose name she learned was Layla, grasped Diana's hands gratefully. "Thank you," Layla said in broken English. "You are angel." Diana smiled, touched by the genuine gratitude. "What's your daughter's name?" "Zara," Layla replied, stroking her daughter's hair gently. "She is good girl." Studies at university. English very hard for her still. Diana looked at Zara, who had opened her eyes and was looking at her with curiosity. Despite being obviously unwell, there was intelligence and kindness in the young woman's face. "Hello, Zara," Diana said gently. "How are you feeling?" Zara attempted to answer in English. "Very tired. Head hurts much." Diana nodded sympathetically. "The doctor will see you soon. Everything will be okay." When the doctor arrived, Diana continued to help translate. It quickly became apparent that Zara was suffering from a severe but treatable infection. With proper antibiotics and rest, she would make a full recovery. What had seemed like a potentially serious medical emergency was actually something quite manageable. "If we had been able to communicate with them earlier," the doctor said quietly to Diana, "we could have treated this hours ago and saved everyone a lot of worry." As Zara was taken for treatment and Layla went with her, she turned back to Diana one more time. "I not know your name," she said. "Sarah," Diana replied, using her assumed name. "Sarah Johnson. Sarah Johnson, you saved my daughter tonight. I never forget." After the family had been taken to a treatment room, Diana remained in the waiting area, but her perspective had completely changed. She began to notice other families who seemed to be struggling with similar communication barriers. An elderly man trying to explain his chest pain in limited English. A young mother with a baby, clearly frustrated by her inability to understand the forms she was being asked to complete. Diana spent the next 3 hours quietly helping where she could, translating, explaining procedures, and simply offering comfort to people who were frightened and confused. Each interaction reinforced what she had observed with the Amara family. The healthcare system, despite being staffed by caring professionals, was not equipped to serve families who didn't speak fluent English. As the night progressed, Diana noticed something remarkable happening. Word had spread among the night staff that there was a volunteer translator in the waiting room. Nurses began seeking her out when they encountered families with language barriers. Doctors asked for her help in explaining treatment plans. The entire atmosphere of the emergency department seemed to become more welcoming and inclusive. At 2 a.m., Diana checked on the Amara family one more time. Zara was looking much better after receiving treatment, and Layla was finally able to smile. "Doctor says she will be okay." Layla told Diana, "Tomorrow we go home." "I'm so glad," Diana replied. "Zara, how do you feel now?" "Much better," Zara answered, her English clearer now that she wasn't fighting fever and pain. "Thank you for helping my mother. She was so scared. Any mother would be scared," Diana said. "Your mother loves you very much." Layla nodded vigorously. "She is my heart," she said, pointing to Zara. As Diana prepared to leave the hospital, the head nurse approached her. "Sarah, I don't know who you are, but you've made an incredible difference tonight. Are you a professional translator?" "No," Diana replied. I believe everyone deserves to be understood, especially when they're frightened. Would you consider volunteering here regularly? We desperately need people with your language skills and your patience." Diana promised to consider it, but she was already forming a much bigger plan in her mind. The next morning, Diana called a meeting with her private secretary and several advisors. She had a proposal that she knew would be challenging to implement, but the night at the hospital had convinced her it was necessary. "I want to establish a program," she announced, "a comprehensive translation and cultural liaison service for hospitals throughout London and eventually the entire country." Her staff looked at her with surprise. This was far more ambitious than her usual charitable initiatives. The program would train bilingual volunteers to work in hospital emergency departments. Diana continued. But it wouldn't just be about translation. These volunteers would help families navigate the healthcare system, explain procedures, and ensure that cultural sensitivities are respected. "Your Royal Highness," her private secretary said carefully, "this would require significant funding and cooperation from the National Health Service." "Then we'll make it happen," Diana replied firmly. "Last night I saw families suffering not because of their medical conditions, but because of communication barriers that are completely preventable." Over the following weeks, Diana threw herself into developing what would become known as the Hearts Connected Initiative, named for its mission to bridge communication gaps in healthcare settings. She met with hospital administrators, healthcare professionals, community leaders, and families who had experienced difficulties similar to the Amaras. What she discovered was that the problem was even more widespread than she had imagined. Miscommunication in hospitals wasn't just causing emotional distress, it was leading to misdiagnoses, delayed treatments, and in some cases serious medical complications. Diana began making regular visits to hospitals throughout London, always incognito, always as Sarah Johnson. She wanted to understand the full scope of the problem before proposing solutions. Each visit reinforced her conviction that the healthcare system needed to become more culturally inclusive. 1 month after her first hospital visit, Diana received a letter that touched her deeply. It was from Zara Amara, written in careful English. Dear Sarah Johnson, my mother told me to write this letter to thank you again for helping us at the hospital. I am studying to become a nurse, and that night you showed me what kind of nurse I want to be. You showed me that helping people is not just about medical treatment, but about understanding and kindness. Because of you, I have decided to specialize in working with families who don't speak English well. I want to be a bridge for them, like you were for us. My mother says you were an angel that night. I think she is right. With gratitude, Zara Amara. Diana read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. This was exactly why the Bridge program needed to exist. It wasn't just about solving immediate communication problems, it was about inspiring a new generation of healthcare workers to think differently about patient care. The Bridge program officially launched 6 months later, with Diana as its patron. The initiative trained volunteers in medical translation, cultural sensitivity, and patient advocacy. Within its first year, the program was operating in 12 London hospitals and had helped over 3,000 families. But perhaps more importantly, the program began to change the culture within healthcare institutions. Medical schools started requiring courses in cultural competency. Hospitals began hiring staff who spoke multiple languages. Patient forms were translated into dozens of languages. 2 years after that first night at London General Hospital, Diana returned for an official visit to see how the Bridge program was working. As she toured the emergency department, she was approached by a young nurse who looked familiar. Your Royal Highness, the nurse said, I wanted to thank you for establishing the Bridge program. It's made such a difference for families like mine. Diana looked more closely and realized it was Zara Amara, now qualified as a registered nurse and working in the very department where Diana had first met her family. Zara, I'm so proud of you, Diana said, genuinely moved by the young woman's achievement. I'm working as a cultural liaison nurse, Zara explained. I help families who speak Arabic, and I'm learning other languages too. Every day I remember what you taught me about kindness and understanding. Layla appeared beside her daughter, now volunteering with the Bridge program herself. When she saw Diana, her face lit up with recognition and joy. Princess Diana, she exclaimed, you are Sarah Johnson. I knew there was something special about you that night. Diana hugged both women, remembering the frightened mother and sick daughter she had met 2 years earlier. Now they were both contributing to solving the very problem they had once experienced. As Diana continued her tour, she was introduced to dozens of Bridge program volunteers and staff members who had been inspired by her vision of inclusive healthcare. Each person had their own story of why the program mattered to them, but they all shared a common understanding. Healthcare was not just about treating medical conditions, but about treating people with dignity and respect. The program's success attracted international attention. Hospitals in other countries began implementing similar initiatives. Medical conferences featured presentations about cultural competency in healthcare. Diana received awards and recognition for her innovative approach to healthcare equity. But for Diana, the greatest reward came in the letters she continued to receive from families who had been helped by the Bridge program. Parents who no longer felt alone and frightened in hospital waiting rooms. Patients who felt heard and understood by their healthcare providers. Healthcare workers who felt better equipped to serve their diverse communities. Years later, when people asked Diana about her proudest achievement, she would often mention the Bridge program. Not because it had brought her recognition, but because it had grown from a single night of witnessing human suffering and responding with compassion. That night at the hospital, Diana would say, I learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply help people understand each other. When we break down communication barriers, we don't just solve immediate problems, we build bridges between communities. The Amara family remained close to Diana throughout the years. Zara eventually became head of cultural services at London General Hospital, and Layla continued volunteering with the Bridge program well into her 70s.
Their story became one of the founding narratives of the program, demonstrating how a single act of kindness could ripple outward to transform entire systems.
In the end, Diana's secret hospital visit had accomplished exactly what she had hoped. It had shown her how to make a real difference in people's lives. By choosing to see the world through the eyes of those who were struggling, she had found a way to create lasting change that would benefit countless families for generations to come. The Bridge program continued to expand and evolve, but its core mission remained the same, ensuring that every person who needed medical care could communicate their needs, understand their treatment, and feel valued as a human being, regardless of their language or cultural background. And in hospital emergency departments across the country, volunteers continue to offer the same simple but powerful gift that Diana had given to the Amara family on that November night, the gift of being understood when it mattered most.